What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome to today's video board. Today, we're going to be taking some predictions at what I think are going to be the top 10 available free agents for the upcoming offseason. Because, we are talking about the draft, but before we need the draft, and I'm kind of like in the mix of getting ready to do my 7-round mock draft for all 32 teams. I need to start looking at free agency. So what I did was I made a big old list of free agents. Obviously, I'm not super involved with like the beat reporters and stuff like that of all these individual teams that aren't the Eagles, so I don't know if there's rumors that players are going to be coming or they're going to be going. So I just try to take my best guess and list out the 10 big name available free agents and where I think they are going to be going. So before I do that, there's a couple names that you might be saying, why you got to talk about this guy? It's because I think they're going to get re-signed. I got Tank Lawrence for the Cowboys, Trey Flowers for the Patriots, Jadeveon Clowney for the Texans, Landon Collins for the Giants, Frank Clark for the Seahawks, Jordan Hicks for the Eagles, and CJ Mosley for the Baltimore Ravens. I think all those guys are going to get re-signed by those teams. So with that being said, as we get to look at this just crappy whatever default Madden free agency period, let's jump into my top 10 and where I think they will end up going. First off, at number 10, we have Anthony Barr, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings. I think an ideal landing spot for him will be the Seattle Seahawks. With the Seattle Seahawks, everything's kind of changing there, and I believe that they have a veteran that I don't think they're going to meet what he wants in terms of a contract in KJ Wright. So really, they have Bobby Wagner, and they made like a Hail Mary effort to try and sign Michael Kendricks after he got released from the Eagles, and then had some insider trading, risk it going to prison, went to the Browns, they released him. The fact that they signed him, and yes, Michael Kendricks is a pretty good linebacker, kind of did show their cards that they are pretty desperate. Understand that they have a decent amount of salary cap spot, and spending a little bit of that to bring back and retain Frank Clark, I think is going to be huge for them. But I think bringing in a linebacker, an athletic sideline-to-sideline linebacker to pair with a Bobby Wagner is just absolutely terrifying. I think from just an athletic standpoint, that might give them the most athletic linebacking core in the league. I mean, we see Bobby Wagner countless times dropping back 20-30 yards in coverage and staying with tight ends, running backs, and occasionally slot wide receivers. I think Anthony Barr would just add that other dimension to the outside that they haven't really had. I mean, they had Barkevious Mingo, you had KJ Wright, Mingo's kind of a bust, and KJ Wright's more of that old school style linebacker. So I think a guy like Anthony Barr would be an excellent pickup here for the Seattle Seahawks, because finally they have some money to spend. I think they're going to invest that in rebuilding the defense and getting a guy like Anthony Barr, who, sometimes can be inconsistent, but I think ultimately the prospect of him and Bobby Wagner just patrolling that field for the Seattle Seahawks, even when they're just out there in nickel, is a clear home run, a clear win for the Seattle Seahawks. At number 9, we have Teddy Bridgewater, who I think will go to the Washington Redskins. Now, this was a close one. I think there's a chance that Teddy could re-sign with the New Orleans Saints, as he could be their successor, if you will, to Drew Brees. But I think if he does have a chance, I think he can get paid out, which probably will be the most likely scenario, because I don't think the Saints have a great amount of salary cap to be working with. I think the Redskins are having to deal with the unknown, like Alex Smith. It looks like he's not going to play at all next year. It could be very well the end of the line for Alex Smith. And when you look at the quarterback draft class here, and especially where the Redskins are going to be picking, I don't necessarily think they're going to be making that investment to trade up. I think that whole trading it for a quarterback with the RG3 thing has burnt that franchise bad enough that, just where they're going to be at, I think you're going to be looking at maybe Drew Lock, maybe Daniel Jones, maybe wait until the second round, like Will Grier or something like that. Like, they could do that, but I think personally, understanding, the investment of those draft picks, I'd go Teddy Bridgewater. I would get Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think it's going to cost an arm and a leg to bring him in. It's going to be more so I could actually see him, honestly, taking a little bit less salary to go somewhere to become a starter, a short-term, less salary deal to hopefully, because Teddy's like 26. He's the same age as me. He's born... I'm actually a month or two older than Teddy Bridgewater, so I mean, he's still well in the prime of his career. You get Teddy Bridgewater on a 1-year, 2-year deal, he plays well, he gets that opportunity to start for the Washington Redskins, he can get that next big contract, be it from Washington or be it from somewhere else. Going to number 8, we have Grady Jared, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons. I think he's going to go to the Cleveland Browns. I think he would complete that defensive line, make that front seven that much better, and kind of like what I've got for the grass from what Brown fans want is they need someone that can affect the pass. Larry Ogunjobi in there, have him more so be, that dual threat. He's not excellent at either, but he's definitely promising, definitely has a lot of upside. He's working but I think he's kind of a tweener right now between being a run stuffer and being a pass rusher. But you get a guy like Grady Jared, who is much more a three technique, the natural three technique that can come in and affect the pass rusher. I think that's good because Cleveland Browns have a whole lot of money to spend. I think it's about time they start making good investments and getting young players that they can hopefully develop, than just continually getting, you know, the Jamie Collins kind of expensive players that are like nearing the end of their prime. Get the guy that's about to be that star, pairing Grady Jared with Ogunjobi, and obviously, you know, you have the likes of Myles Garrett, Emmanuel Ogbah. I mean, he's still, you know, up in the air, you know, with the defensive line strength of this class. I think that, you know, you get Grady Jarrett locked up, and then you can go elsewhere, because where they pick in the draft, they're probably going to be on the outside looking in to get those really good interior defensive linemen. They might get one to slip it, maybe, but I feel like if you lock a Grady Jarrett up, and then you can, you know, kind of take advantage of those teams that are biting on the D tackle, some player at another position of need is going to slip here for the Cleveland Browns, be it someone in the secondary, be it someone on the offensive line. So I think Grady Jarrett to the Cleveland Browns is an excellent investment for a team that has a whole lot of money to spend right this upcoming offseason. Number 7, I have Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. Now, while I think he would be a dream signing for me as an Eagle fan, one side because I think he would be a tremendous fit for our defense, and another because I'm a huge fan. Understanding Philly's kind of going to be up against it with the salary cap this year. I don't think you're going to be able to splurge on one of these top 10 type names. So another team I think would be just ecstatic to get a player of Honey Badger's caliber would be the Raiders. I think when you look at him, you can play free safety, you can play nickel, both spots that I think they desperately need to add some more talent. I mean, they got Nick Nelson from Wisconsin. You know, could develop into a nickel, but I think right now a guy like Honey Badger, understanding the Raiders have a whole lot of salary cap, you know, getting a guy that can just play center field and another athletic safety, much like what they have in Carl Joseph, who was on the trade block, but then John Gruden, I believe, just started playing him, and he's playing very well down the stretch, a lot like Garyon Conley. So I think a guy like Honey Badger could really help complete that Raiders secondary as they try to just completely revamp and get better everywhere. And understanding that, you know, there's still another player that we're going to talk about a little higher up on the list that I think the Raiders could go in and get. Understanding that they have clearly 3 first-round picks. I think it will be heavily on the defensive side because that is the strength of this year's draft class. But that also is the strength of this year's free agency class. So I think the Raiders are a team that just were completely below average in pretty much everything last year on the defensive side of the ball. I think a guy like Honey Badger not only brings you that talent side, but he's also a personality. He's also someone that will help push jersey sales and, you know, get a lot of more eyes on the product because he's an electrifying playmaker as they get ready to move to Las Vegas. Of the Chicago Bears, now going to the Carolina Panthers, who have seemingly just been throwing everything and anything they can at the wall and seeing what sticks to help out their secondary. As you can see, they got 59-year-old Mike Adams. They kind of did a late-ditch effort to get Eric Reed in when no one wanted to touch him. And Eric Reed actually played pretty decent down the stretch. I think Eric Reed, in tandem with Adrian Amos, that could be a nasty safety combo. And I mean, Adrian Amos always thought he was pretty good, but Bears fans did not until he got paired up with Eddie Jackson. And together they became, I'd probably say, at minimum, top 8 safety tandem, maybe even top 5. But I think when you get something like that, maybe you can get that chemistry with him and Eric Reed. I think they balance off each other. Obviously, Eric Reed's a little bit more of a physical, aggressive safety, where you get a guy like Amos, who's a lot more finesse, a little bit more technical, a little bit more athletic. And I think this is a home run for the Carolina Panthers. They desperately need to get more playmakers in their secondary, especially when you go up against the Saints and you go against Falcons every year. And the fact that they've been kind of, let's be frank, undermanned on the secondary side of things. It's about time they make that investment. They have enough salary cap. I mean, you'd assume they'll probably chuck some money at Darrell Williams. Outside of that, you know, they've already, you know, kind of showed that they're getting ready to cut off some of the fat by letting Thomas Davis go. So I think, you know, you're going to have the money, spend it, make it worthwhile, get a guy that's just entering his prime here, and a guy like Adrian Amos would be a huge get for the Carolina Panthers secondary. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Adrian Amos. I have been for quite some time. I remember I was shocked that Philly passed on him when he had that huge pro day at Penn State. But seeing number 32 there for the Carolina Panthers, I think would get a lot of Panthers fans rocks off. Going to number 5, I have Ndamukong Suh, who is a member of the Rams that are going to play in the Super Bowl this upcoming weekend. They are going to, hopefully not re-sign him. Let's be honest, the Rams have no chance in hell of re-signing him. Same with LaMarcus Joyner. So where's Suh going to go? And when you look at teams, look at the landscape, the Colts have an absurd amount of salary cap. And I think looking at their spending habits last year, I don't think they're going to be kind of put off from the age of Ndamukong Suh when understanding what he's going to be able to bring to that interior, that defense. Autry kind of had a breakout year, but pair that with a guy like Ndamukong Suh that will really complete that front 7 here for the Colts that had emerging players. Obviously, you got my adopted son, Darius Leonard. You had Anthony Walker, who, my God, I've been on the Anthony Walker trade for quite some time. He was my sleeper like 2-3 years ago when he's coming out of the draft at Northwestern. Complete that and make the investment. I mean, the Colts have a whole lot of money. I think they could maybe splurge at a wide receiver. But, I mean, everyone's like, they got to get LeVeon Bell. They got to get in the Antonio Brown sweepstakes. They had a good thing going. Get someone that, while he may have a certain reputation, he's not known to be a locker room cancer. He's not known to rock the boat. I feel like anyone like that, anyone that's tempting enough here for the Indianapolis Colts, that could potentially mess up what they had. The guys that aren't Frank Reich guys. I don't think they're going to overextend themselves to get those kind of guys. But I think a veteran like Ndamukong Suh, an absolute warrior, an absolute monster in the interior, would help put everything together there for that defensive line. Like I said, you got Danico Autry, who did come on strong, very strong. I think he got like AFC Offensive Player of the Month or something like that down the stretch. Pair that with Ndamukong Suh, just start mauling teams in the run game. It's going to be that much more dynamic. And I think this would be a good investment here for the Colts. He's not going to be cheap. I don't necessarily know how expensive he's going to be, but I think this would be the kind of guy that could help take that defense over the edge. At number 4, we have the Golden Tate rumors. What's going on with Golden Tate? Are the Philadelphia Eagles going to resign him or not? Probably not. We're probably going to just hope him well under free agency and get that comp pick next year. So what team would Golden Tate be ideal for? For me, very easy. Buffalo. The Buffalo Bills fits a bunch of reasons. Right now, I think I don't want to say it before the draft, even though it kind of counts before the draft to make that hot pick. Randy, when he's taking that big dump in South Park, to take that big gamble on who's going to be your sleeper team. I think Baron Crow actually asked this question on Twitter, and I said the Bills. I think the Bills, if they have a good draft, they have a lot of money to spend in free agency. They can make like a handful of moves here. Like hell, even Ndamukong Suh could be a nice little landing spot here in Buffalo. I actually originally had Suh. I had number 5 and number 4 both going to the Bills, but I think Suh, just because he would cost a lot of money, I don't think the Buffalo Bills are going to double dip because last year they overpaid vastly for Star Lotulelei. I don't know if they have it out of that ugly contract, but that was like one of the worst contracts given out. So I think now you help out on the offensive side. I think the wide receivers in this class, I don't necessarily know if there's one at 9 that I'd be willing to take a gamble on if I'm the Bills. I mean, even though I think if I want to gamble, if I had the luxury to gamble, a DK Metcalf or a N'Keal Harry could be a very intriguing option. But even if they still do that, they need that perennial slot. I think Zay Jones has that potential. Robert Foster looked pretty good. But outside of that, I mean, Charles Clay has not emerged any way, shape, or form as that safety net, that easy target for Josh Allen to help him in his development. So you go get that. You go get not only one of the best slot wide receivers in the league, you not only get one of the best yards after the catch receivers in the league, all of which the Bills don't really have right now, but you get that safety net to help Josh Allen out. You give that easy read, that guy that's almost always wide open, that doesn't drop the ball, and also brings a winning attitude, even though, Detroit hasn't really won a lot. Obviously, Philly wasn't able to get the Super Bowl, but I mean, he is, for the most part, he already has Super Bowl experience. Not just a reliable set of hands, and ultimately, that's pretty much what I wrote down here for Golden Tate going to the Bills. Get Josh Allen that safety net. Get this guy that can hog the target share into whoever they want. If it's going to be Zay Jones, Robert Foster, or someone that they draft, can emerge on the outside as that new, perimeter guy. I think a guy like Golden Tate not only would just give the Buffalo Bills what they're lacking at wide receiver, but give Josh Allen what he's lacking on this offense. And at number 3, we have Brandon Graham of my Philadelphia Eagles. Now, there has been murmurs that he might take a hometown discount. I just don't see any way a team like the Raiders, any team that are in like the top 5 of salary cap that run a 4-3 defense, aren't going to try to overbid Philly to attain Brandon Graham's services. I mean, no one has, while his sack numbers haven't been pretty, let's just look at Pro Football Focus. He is a Pro Football Focus darling. No one has been able to affect the passer as much as Brandon Graham. While he doesn't get the sacks in terms of sacks and rushes and stuff like that, he's always like top 3 in the league. And I just think, when you look at the Raiders, again, I don't necessarily know if they're going to get Bosa. They're probably not. I'd say they're not. So they're not going to get the premier edge rusher. Are they going to reach a little bit overextend for a guy like Josh Allen, who I personally think is much better in a 3-4 scheme than a 4-3? So there's a chance they might just wait and see. Obviously, it's a very strong draft class for the defensive line. They might hope that someone can slip, but even if they slip, they still need technically 2. I don't think Arden Key is refined enough, and I think best case scenario, you have Arden Key come in as a rotation, kind of similar to what we do with here in Philadelphia. But until then, I think a guy like Brandon Graham is a veteran. He's a John Gruden type guy. Will be, without a doubt, the best edge rusher on the team. I think even if you look at getting a Nick Bosa and stuff like that, I think Brandon Graham's production still will probably rival that, at least considering those top guys' rookie years, you're going to get that out of Brandon Graham. But I think long-term, I understand the Raiders have a whole lot of salary cap. He's not going to cost nowhere near what the premier salary that Khalil Mack got, so it's not just one of those things like, why would the Raiders pay Brandon Graham? They weren't going to pay another top-tier edge rusher. So he's still cheaper, and I think ultimately because he is a John Gruden guy, and even if they decide to go with someone young or they do not, either way, there's no scenario that a guy like Brandon Graham won't drastically help the edge rush and just needs from the Raiders. I mean, it became a meme, right? John Gruden at all the press conferences saying, man, we need an edge rusher. Man, we need an edge rusher, like right after they traded Khalil Mack. So I think they go out and get theirs, regardless of what happens in the draft, in Brandon Graham. At number 2, because, god damn it, Madden's offline player management is terrible. Leave Earl Thomas, who I just can't move for the sake of this video. Where do I think Earl Thomas is going to go? I am going to Green Bay. He's going to be Clinton Dick's replacement, who, I mean, you know, they didn't even really replace him after they traded him, but clearly they wanted to move on. I just think adding a veteran that's as elite as Earl Thomas. I know some people think he might go to Dallas. I don't think necessarily Dallas could have the money, especially because they're going to be backing up the Brinks truck to re-sign DeMarcus Lawrence. I don't think they have enough to make 2 big superstar investments on the defensive side. So I think a team like Green Bay, that's the perfect spot. Earl Thomas is a guy that can help take that Packers defense over the edge. Plus, Earl Thomas has been a guy throughout his career that makes everybody else better on that defense. And when you look at the Green Bay secondary, you have Josh Jones, who will probably be the other safety, young developing guy. In the secondary, you got Kevin King, Jair Alexander, Josh Jackson, all these guys that have a whole lot of upside. A guy like Earl Thomas not only is going to help them develop, but he's going to make it a lot easier for those guys to grow because they're not going to get burnt. They're always going to have that center field. Like, he's probably the best center field safety in the league, just covering their back. So that, you know, maybe they can be a little bit more aggressive. Maybe they can be a little bit more expressive in their play versus knowing that, oh my God, man, we're just not a great secondary. I'm going to be kind of hesitant because I don't want to look bad on tape. A guy like Earl Thomas can kind of ease their jobs. He's going to make everyone else's lives easier, and especially the dude on the other side, Aaron Rodgers. Knowing that you have a guy like Earl Thomas that can help that secondary, it's not always going to be all right where you have to get in a shootout. And hopefully we score more points. Like, I like Earl Thomas can completely take this Green Bay Packers defense, new look Packers defense, over the top. And I think he'll be well worth the money for a team that actually kind of has a decent amount of salary cap to spend. And you also got to assume they'll have even more in the war chest by moving on from a couple ugly contracts on that defense. Clay Matthews, most notably. And at number 1, because again, Madden won't let me trade him, we have LeVeon Bell. He is going to be the premier player, even though he's not at a premier position. I think LeVeon Bell is going to be going to the New York Jets. He's going to be running back 1. He's going to be a new weapon there for Darnold. I think Adam Gase is going to go, yes, sir, get me a LeVeon Bell. Now, Gase kind of could complicate things. We saw Gase the first time any player seemingly had any restrictions in the locker room. Looking at Jay, most notably, there's a lot of reports with issues between Gase and Devontae Parker. I don't necessarily know how well Le'Veon Bell's attitude is going to necessarily mesh with Adam Gase. But when you look at the Jets, they have an ungodly amount of money. They desperately need a new running back. And I think that Le'Veon Bell, I think there's already been rumors that he could go there. I really do think the top 2 teams right now for Le'Veon Bell are the Jets and the Colts. And I think understanding the Colts having Marlon Mack, understanding the Colts culture, everything that's going on there, I think the Jets are much more inclined to get a guy like Le'Veon Bell. Well, let's be completely honest, he would not only be their best running back, there is a chance he would be their most dynamic receiver as well. That's, there's a chance Robbie Anderson goes. I don't think he will. I think Robbie Anderson will be kind of excited to work with an offensive guru like Adam Gase, and they have the money to clearly pay him. But I think ultimately Le'Veon Bell does go to the Jets. It's a big market. I mean, it's not a big market team. I mean, when's the last time you saw anyone wearing anything Jets in New York? But it is a big market, and hey, if it does work out, he's got to make more money for all that media and stuff like that than he would in Indianapolis, in Indiana. Indiana or New York. Clearly, it makes a little bit more sense here for Le'Veon Bell to go to the Jets. Plus, they're going to pay him a ridiculous salary for a running back and just a position in general that's not going to get those big fat contracts. So there you go, guys. Those are my top 10 predictions. We got Anthony Barr going to the Seahawks, Teddy Bridgewater going to the Redskins, Grady Jared going to the Browns, Honey Badger going to the Raiders, Adrian Amos going to the Panthers, Ndamukong Suh going to the Colts, Golden Tate going to the Bills, Brandon Graham going to the Raiders, Earl Thomas going to the Packers, and last but not least, Le'Veon Bell going to the Jets. Do you agree or disagree with any of these free agency predictions? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, tomorrow, we'll probably have a new replacement, so make sure you don't miss out on that. Very exciting addition to the team. Subscribe if you're new, and until next time, we see 4, saying peace